Welcome to Driven to Lead. I'm your host, Wayne Brandon. In this series, we explore the real world stories of key executives to find the leadership lessons that help move us all forward. If you like these conversations, we'd really appreciate it if you hit the subscribe and like button. It'll help us out a lot. But now we got another great program for you today, so let's make it happen. Yeah, very happy to have with us today Siobhan James-Alexander, the CEO of One Communications in St. Thomas, Virgin Islands, U.S. Virgin Islands. Siobhan is a chief executive officer for the company, and she's been chief executive for many companies in the Caribbean for many, many years. She served as CEO of Logic Cayman. She did some advanced fiber expansion and digital innovation there. Great customer experience strategies in place. She previously led Millennium Heights Medical Complex in St. Lucia as well, overseeing the integration of more than 1,000 staff into a national healthcare institutional single medical complex. An incredible feat. Siobhan spent over a decade with Digicel, including roles in CEO of Digicel St. Lucia and also St. Vincent, and in the Grenadines with oversight for Grenada. So we have with us someone today who's got degrees in engineering, information systems management, an MBA in finance, and a doctor of business administration from the University of Liverpool. What an impressive bio. Siobhan, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Wayne. It is a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, the pleasure's mine. We haven't had anyone from the Virgin Islands before, so I think this is a special treat to get a perspective on that part of the world. Not too shabby to live down there, I expect. A lot of people think about that as going there for a great vacation, but now you're living and working there. How long you been there?
I've been in the Virgin Islands for a year, but I am a
Okay.
Caribbean girl, so this
Yes,
is
right.
this is a good, like you say, it's an absolutely fantastic place to work. There are nuances, of course, with the Caribbean, but there's sun, there's sea, and there's sand. So what better
Yeah,
place,
exactly.
right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's why when I live in Naples, Florida, so I have a similar, environment, sunny and warm in the winters, and it's difficult to talk to some of my colleagues and friends in the north. I try not to rub it in, but I do encourage them to come and visit whenever they can. You're in the same kind of place.
Exactly.
So, Siobhan, tell me about One Communications and what you're doing there, what the business is about. Telecommunication, a fascinating industry and one that's evolving very fast. So I'd love to hear about what you're doing there.
So I joined One Communications actually in the VI April last year. So this is my 1 year anniversary. But
Oh, congrats.
the parent company is AT&I out of Boston. We do have 4 subsidiaries in the Caribbean: Bermuda, Cayman, which I came from,
Mhm.
USVI, and Guyana. And ATN, of course, has other territories like in Alaska and in mainland. Very fascinating. And as you've pointed out, that we are telecommunications and it becomes the backbone of everything that you do. And in an island, that is even more of a nuance because communication becomes the lifeline of the development. And so,
Yeah,
governments are looking at you apart from just the consumer, B2B. And, COVID taught us how important telecommunications is and how it's evolved.
yeah,
And rapidly as technology is changing, how you learn, how do you incorporate the things like AI? So USVI is no different than any other island or territory where
mhm,
we become the center of how things are built in economic development. We do
mhm.
fiber, we do broadband, TV,
Yeah, yeah,
and also mobile. And so it is all encompassing. It's an
right.
ecosystem that you kind of build and you become the center of the consumer and the business market. Why is that important? Because as technology changes, your job becomes a little harder. Harder
Yeah,
from the workforce, managing AI, and the expectations of the consumer as well, right? And I think that's
sure.
what drives me and what has kept me in this industry. It's that every day, no 2 days are the same here.
Never a dull moment, I guess.
Never a
So,
dull moment.
uh, are there competitors on the island, or are you the primary source for all of those services you mentioned?
So, I think if you step back for a minute,
Yeah.
One Communications, we only rebranded last year. We used to be Via, and we've been in the USVI for over 50 years. So we come
Mhm.
from government owned and transition.
Yeah.
We're not the only
Okay.
telco. Liberty and T-Mobile both are in this space.
Interesting.
And so it becomes a competitive environment. We
Okay.
become incumbent in one and then the challenger in the other. And so how you play in that space with a nationwide brand like T-Mobile, how do you remain competitive? And how do you ensure your customer experience meets that expectation that I speak about
Sure.
is one of the biggest challenges here. And then when you look from a board perspective and from, your shareholders, islands are specific because they're limited by size. And so when you
Hmm.
start to look at expansion and you look at investment, of course, ROI becomes an IRR becomes an issue and
Right.
challenge.
Right.
But,
Yeah.
it doesn't change where you are and what they expect. Expect 5G, expect fiber to the home. How do you balance that? And
Yeah.
balance a workforce is basically where the CEO plays every day.
Right, right. It makes perfect sense. Honestly, a little competition does make you better in all those areas, especially becoming more customer focused and having an eye to the efficiency of the business, as you mentioned, the internal rate of return on your capital, obviously, but more so the just the overall efficiency and operation of the business that allows you to stay at the top of the innovation curve as you need to now. Hey, just a question, because just out of my ignorance, do you get most of your information, whatever it is, whether it's internet or TV or telecommunications? Is it mostly underwater cable, or is it coming satellite, or some combination? Is it a different mix in the islands than it would be, on a mainland location?
No different mix. Coming in is subsea. We come into
Yeah.
subsea.
Okay.
Resilience is through satellite. We do
Mhm.
have three islands. So USVI, it is very interesting because there is connectivity for three islands. I live in St.
Okay.
Thomas, but St. Thomas, St. Croix, and St. John, we operate in all three. So there's
Mhm.
interconnectivity around the territory, subsea, and then there's from here outbound to mainland, right? And now we're
Yeah.
talking about hurricane belt, so the resiliency becomes your
Yeah.
your baseline, your bottom line,
Right.
right? So
Right. Right.
rings and bringing that information in your cost. And what you've just pointed out is the conundrum that becomes the Caribbean because our cost changes, our base changes because of how we action, how we get telecommunications
Mhm.
in, and how we become resilient within those.
Mm. Yeah. So even in the subsea cables, you've got stations where it's coming, onto the island, and then you got stations on the other side. I mean, those stations that are receiving and then distributing across the island need to be as fortified and as underground and as secure from hurricane winds and flooding as possible. So it's not just the undersea cable; it's all the other infrastructure as well. Especially when you're in a beautiful location like you're in, but is very, very vulnerable to Atlantic hurricanes, right?
It is susceptible. So every
Yeah.
year around now, Wayne, I start to get one more gray hair because we're coming
Yeah.
into that season and you never know what it
Right.
presents. And most people just think of the storms, the hurricanes, but there are storms. Today, for instance, we have flash flood warnings because there's rain. And
Yeah.
that becomes an issue. How do you send out your
Right.
trucks? How do you mobilize? How do you
Sure.
keep your network running with
Yeah.
all these weather conditions? And so it is an exciting space to work because every day you're either looking at the weather and
Yeah.
you become the meteorologist to see, or,
Yeah.
or you're
Yeah,
just,
for sure.
yeah, yeah, it is definitely you have different challenges when you operate within this
Right.
belt.
Yeah. So did you always imagine you're going to be a telecommunications executive, or what did you want to be when you grew up, when you were a kid?
So funny that you asked that. I wanted to be an engineer, always wanted to be an
Okay.
engineer, but wanted to work with machines, right? So
Mhm.
very little people management. Give
Mhm.
me a problem, I solve it. So I did electrical engineering and I
Yeah.
specialized in computer systems. And if you asked my younger self what I would be an engineer. That's it.
Okay. Yeah.
Nothing more than that. Over time and as my career developed, I moved into operations, products first, which is the bridge between commercial and the technical. So it still used my skill set,
Hmm.
operations. And fun fact, I remember my dad always saying, whilst I did engineering, do a
Hmm.
finance course. And I was like, why? I
Yeah.
don't need that. What am I going to do with that? And here I
Yeah.
am years
Yeah.
later. I had to do a finance course. So
Yeah, good for you. Well, you know what? It's really a blessing to have a technical background when you're running a business because there's always some technical aspect of something. If it's not in your products and your services directly, it's in the infrastructure you need to operate and run the business, right? So having that technical understanding, it's also I find from working, there's a lot of people who criticize engineers. We're not going to do that today. Mostly just for fun, but I find that the structured thinking of an engineering mindset is very valuable just in charting out systems, looking at process flow, regardless of what it's with regard to. So I think that's a background it's easier to have that background and moving into management and learning the finance and the business operations piece, I think, than the other way around, where you're a business person, you're connected to the customer, and you're in the commercial space and running a business, maybe a finance guy, and then having to understand the technical aspects of something. That's a much bigger lift, I think.
It is, I think, for me, and then I think that's one of my strengths is, like you pointed out, logical thinking, right?
Mhm, mhm.
The why, questioning why,
Yeah,
and how you
sure.
get solutions, the if and kind of situation of if
Right.
this happens, what could happen, and how do you
Yeah.
prepare for it? And I think that's, what did I take away, and what do I use every day from my engineering degree? That logical
Yeah.
thinking.
So what's the next biggest hurdle for One Communications and for you as you look forward the next year or two? What are the things that are coming up that you've got to solve?
I don't know if it's a solve or a bringing together an augmentation, right? And as cliche as it sounds, the use of AI and how it
Mhm.
it
Yeah.
augments as a tool. And it's two-pronged a challenge, right? Because any workforce that starts to hear about AI, and
Mhm.
considering how long that we've been here, we do have tenured staff. I manage about 5 generations of people at the moment. And just
Wow.
how do you bring that forward without given the fear of it's a job replacement, and
Yeah.
that it's a tool to help you do efficiency, there's skill
Right.
sets, there's changes, but how do you take the person along? And so from the people aspect of it, how do you bring in AI without bringing the fear of that uncertainty and the emotional reaction that comes with it, which is resistance? And then
Mhm.
from a operational perspective, AI is great until AI is great until you need to be able to tool it properly. If you don't give it the right inputs, then the output that we think that is it's absolutely correct could be very incorrect for your customer. And so how do
Right.
you not rush to bring it into your operations, that you train it properly and that it drives the efficiency that it's supposed to versus
Mhm.
create more issues for you, right? And so
Yeah, absolutely.
from a holistic perspective and from the operation perspective, I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we will face and are
Yeah.
facing, and how we bring that to the fore is where we're spending some time. And when I say we, it's because again, One Communications VI is part of a wider group. And so we're
Right.
doing it as a group versus just one telco. There
Mm.
will be the considerations of the differences between the markets, but the
Right.
fundamentals remain the same, right? And
Yeah.
um, that's probably where I will spend a lot of my time within the next
Yeah.
few months.
Yeah, and it's not surprising. I think a lot of people talk about AI and have no idea what they're talking about. I mean, all of us are always trying to catch up with something with the technology is moving as fast as it is. I think we're still like in the equivalent of the first 6 months of the internet because but it's moving so fast. It's a different world.
It's different world, it's a different situation, and
Mm.
it isn't it isn't as clean because there are so many different tools as well, and
Yes.
which
Yeah.
one is the best one, and how do you make sure that you're not giving it the wrong data, that you're not, providing the wrong output. And a lot of persons just take AI for what it is, and so whatever the output is correct. But
Yeah.
sometimes you have to kind of vet it too, right?
Of
So
course.
it is that.
Yeah. And it's not one thing, it's hundreds of things already and becoming thousands of things
It's
every day.
about
So
exactly.
I just try to do a simple partitioning for me. One of the things, well, first of all, I'm encouraged that we're still early on, is what I was going to say. I think all of us are not really behind if we want to apply ourselves and begin to understand in a little more robust way. And I do that with some of the businesses I consult with, where we actually talk about where would it make sense for you to deploy this given your business processes and your business challenges. But for me personally, the way I look at it, there are tools that are available right now that help me to just do my job better, to be smarter, to be better informed. There are tools that we can build that are pretty simple that replace tasks that are easy for AI to take on that
Right.
doesn't have the risk. And then there are more complex tasks and systems that are evolving all the time. But that takes a great, for your particular business, it often takes a great deal of specificity and a bespoke mindset of building, tools that actually work in your business.
But
Let's go
you
back to
also
one of
pointed
the.
out something, Wayne.
Mhm,
Even, one of the considerations is in-source, which is, build it
mhm,
in-house or
mhm.
off the shelf and tweak, right? And so
Right,
even those
exactly. Yeah.
considerations are key in our business. And then you
Yeah.
start to look at customer data protection and the
All of
list
those
goes
things
on.
as well. Yeah. 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 It goes on and on. Yeah. I think the obviously the thing that you were dealing with your employees, and you mentioned you have multiple generation of employees, you got different age groups and different mindsets, some more technical savvy than others, perhaps. But the thing that I believe we can encourage our people with is that the value they have to think laterally is still very powerful across a business. So experience still matters, and vision still matters. Creating something that hasn't been created before from the inputs that you have. I think humans are still going to be pretty handy at that for quite some time. And I also believe that things like relationships are going to be really important, especially in the consumer side of things. The best salespeople, when I go out and talk to salespeople and help them to improve who they are, it's all about building relationships and really, you know, true care and feeding of the customer base. That's the last item I just mentioned. It's caring. I mean, as caring as machines can pretend to be,
They're not
um,
genuine.
they're not genuinely caring, right? It's
Yeah.
just not their nature. It's our nature. I think we're children of God who've been made in a special way to relate to one another, and that relationship is always going to be great. Now, that said, I mean, there are some tools like in the customer-facing tools, when a customer becomes a lead online and they want a response and they send a chat in or they send an inquiry in. I mean, we've got a bunch of people some are lazy, but most are just overwhelmed. Salespeople can't get back to leads quickly, and the customer wants a response in 1 minute or less, right? So, bots are great at that, right? They can come back with a very friendly, absolute on-target response to a customer inquiry in a chat. And as long as the customer's happy with that, because the speed and the accuracy, and they are most of the time, that becomes a very valuable tool in a business. And it's really the relationship side of it. But then when that same customer wants to have a conversation with a real
Yeah.
person, when it gets to that point, I don't think they really want to talk to an AI engine, right? And so I'm pretty sure that the data is pretty clear on that. So I'm not saying I don't know that they want to. I know they don't want to, and so as a result, blending it into the right place at the right time is going to be an interesting challenge for everyone, not just you. So tell
And
me, yeah, go ahead.
just to kind of lead off for what you just said,
Mm,
understanding your market as well and the
yeah,
demographics of your
yeah,
market. And you're very right.
absolutely.
Qualifying the lead and that early kind of what do you need,
Yeah,
etc., is important. But people genuinely want to deal with people, to close. If I want to sign over my, a contract, etc., where it's probably, a few $1,000s, especially. I want to talk to somebody. I want to look you in
yeah,
the face, right? And so
yeah,
where we actually insert those deficiencies and
yeah.
allow the human aspect to close is where the industry is having a debate at the moment.
Yeah, yeah, that's a really important insight because I mean it's interesting to me that you're much younger than me, probably half my age, but you still have that feeling and that need. Like I grew up with it, obviously. So in my world, it was always face to face, belly to belly selling, right? So you're always there with the customer, you're always buying and selling that way. But things have changed over time, but haven't changed so much that most people would rather have that personal interface and some
Yes.
confidence, and even a handshake. Who knew? So, before we move on, I just wanted to think about technically what do you think about the telecommunications and entertainment and information delivery space that you're in? We got low orbit Earth satellite networks that are going up, like putting it up there, like the satellites up there, like popcorn. We're going to be computing in space. We're going to be doing edge computing up there and transferring information back and forth. It's going to reach areas that previously hadn't had great service in a number of areas. Blending those kind of solutions with traditional satellite and cable solutions. I mean, what do you see as like the next big breakthrough that's going to take you know, your business from where you are to where you need to be? Because not just in the operation of the business, but the actual technical delivery.
So, like you've pointed out, there's LEOs, which is the lower, and now we're
Mm.
even talking about the GEOs, where
Right, right.
and
Yep.
so I think everything has its time and its space. And one of the things that needs to happen within the industry is that consolidation and that understanding of where each of them kind of plays. In where we start to look at remote areas where it doesn't viably, present itself for you to build fiber, satellite
Mm,
wins. And it
mm,
gives that access, and accessibility is so important.
mhm.
Where fiber is and continues to be, fiber directly, still wins for now. And as
Mhm.
technology, that I say
Yeah,
for now because it's
yeah,
getting better by time, right? In an
right,
environment like mine, for instance, satellite will have its challenges, cloud cover during
right.
a hurricane, etc. But it's a
Yeah,
good backup and a good fallback when fiber
sure.
breaks. So I
Yeah.
think there's a hybrid version and tech and
Mhm.
even down to the density of how many people can simultaneously connect. That's a
Yeah, right.
consideration. What's the
Yeah.
speed? People are talking about 2 gigs to a house, 10 gigs to a house. For
Mhm.
me, when is enough?
Yeah, yeah.
It's
Well, how
probably a
much is
nice to
enough?
have.
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
the bandwidth just, continues to expand in terms of the need and with speed and volume of information. It's incredible.
it
So
is.
interesting dilemma that you have in your industry. So we'll have to see how it evolves over the next few years. It's moving fast.
It's moving
So
fast.
yeah, Siobhan, in this program, one of our primary focuses is to really learn leadership lessons from key stories of executives like yourself. So tell us a story, if you would, of something from your current business or something from the past. Could be a success, a failure, or something in between. Set it up for us. Tell us a story. Let's see if we can find some leadership lessons inside of it.
So consider a younger me, a much younger CEO,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
coming into the business, fighting, in terms of, yes, we're winning. And then consider that the company goes into a major transformation. And part of
Mm-hmm.
that transformation says that you need to look at cost. And
Mm-hmm.
once you start to look at cost, you start to look at employees.
Yeah,
And
of course.
consider the young CEO, the younger me, have developed with persons. So now you understand their families, you understand their nature. It's personal to you, and you have sat with consultants and lots of spreadsheets that says that you need to cut your manpower by more than half, and you need to deliver that consistently, and over, a short period of time. And so within that time where myself, they were looking at, how the operation was going to change, and I could have been impacted. And standing in front of your teammates and saying that here's the new structure, and here is what the package could look for you. And you have personal decisions to make of whether you want to go or you want to stay. And if you stay, here's what your new job looks like. And I tell this story because I think it was one of the biggest transformations for me personally. One,
Yeah.
understanding how to deliver that message, because I learned in time it's not what you say, it's how you say it.
Right.
One, how you impact lives and livelihood, and how you still keep a humane side of it. So across the
Mm-hmm.
board, it wasn't just my entity that was going through it, but my entity survived because I took the approach of don't just deliver it and walk away. How do you help deliver the message, but also give the person the next step? How do you
Right.
listen? How do you But not taking the emotion so much that it also hinders how you deliver and that you achieve those numbers. And I think that it took, not I think, it did take a lot from me personally because I was living that situation. It took a few months for us to get there. But I walked away with good stories because the persons that I stuck to help write a CV, help with placements, etc., became part of my good news stories of when you see them thrive in another industry now, and
Sure.
you're like, you didn't do this because it was circumstances, but you contributed.
Hmm.
And it also said that sometimes the spreadsheet isn't right. Because when I look back, we did in time revert to the same manpower.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because we probably cut too deep at the time.
Hmm.
Um, and it said to me that I needed to find my voice because I knew that it was too deep and I articulated it, but probably not loud enough. And so that continues to play with me as I go through my career of
Yeah.
when do you stand up, when do you say, and how you deliver what you deliver without being overly emotional about it, because that too stops the other person from listening to you when you're in a boardroom. So,
You think? Well, you have a special challenge because men are really, really unfair to women executives still in this world. I mean, in my opinion, not everyone, but I end up coaching a lot of executive women, and it's I enjoy it tremendously because it really provides a window into the extra challenges that women have, and it's so important to be empathetic and caring for your team. And no one would refute that. But sometimes when women lean into that, they're viewed as having some weakness that men don't have. And I just that bothers me. And I like to help people work on that, both men and women. So, but on the point, there's a number of really powerful leadership lessons in the story you just recounted. I want to continue with empathy first and talk about that for a minute because I was just in a coaching session not too long ago with one of my clients, and we were working on this issue. And it was the kind of thing where, in one moment, maybe you have an employee who, let's say, had a death in the family, and they need time off, and you're working with them to try to help to encourage them. And maybe you're literally in tears with them because you're truly empathetic, but then you have to walk across the lobby after that meeting, and you need to, be on stage delivering a congratulations speech to a team who hit an objective and are getting an award, right?
right.
And so I don't think I don't think it's widely recognized, and you're smiling because you lived it. It's not widely recognized as a leader how you have to be completely engaged and sincere and genuine in your reaction to all situations, but be able to compartmentalize those emotions sufficiently so that you can be objective and logical and play the role that you need to play to be inspiring. Maybe at a time when, if you let that sadness from another situation creep in. So I think the way you described, being genuine and being honest and being caring, and then doing things onward to prove that you were caring to help the people who had to be released, was really a powerful lesson to learn. And as a leader, making sure that we always are human and that we feel that mutual human respect for everyone. The hardest thing you're ever going to do is let someone go, you
Yes,
know? Even when they should be let go, it's hard for me anyway. I don't know about for you. I expect it's
it
hard for
is.
you as well because they have a family and they have a lot. They need the livelihood, and sometimes they really deserve to go. And most of the time they need to go because they're toxic to the organization. Unfortunately, those kind of people exist, right? And they're toxic to themselves. You try to help them and they don't take the help, and so you have to, for the greater good, let them go. In this situation, I've been in the same situation you're in many times over the years in the corporate career. The economic cycle's going like this, and what you do is you cut too deep when things look dire, right? You
Yes.
make you take these draconian measures that are too severe, and whether you fight against it or not, it's coming. So, maybe I give yourself a little credit. You wanted to maybe stand a little stronger. Maybe you can just recount now this situation where you cut too deep and had to add people back now in the next time this happens. But it's going to happen. And then what happens is the economic curve starts to improve, and then you always get a little bit fat at the end of the cycle, right? So you have a little bit too many, but maybe not 50% cuts. 10% cuts are hard. 20% cuts are devastating. 50%, I mean, just that's a complete realignment of the company, and you got to be careful when you do that you don't cut too much into the bone because if you do, the company's not going to survive, right? And so I admire the fact that you did that with compassion. You did it with strength, obviously, and you made the company survive, and you were able to add people back as needed to make sure that you got the right mix. How long did it take to go from the 50% cut back to like an operating level that was, really where felt you were pretty good balance?
About 2 years
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
between that. And that's just because, of course, most companies don't want to walk back from a decision like that too quickly, right?
Right. Right.
There were assumptions based on efficiency and that, it'd
Yeah.
be back office and a lot of the roles could have been, and
Right.
then that didn't kind of pan out. So in time,
Yeah.
you grew
Right.
back. But,
Right.
it is, I think what does not show very well, Wayne, is that emotional struggle from the top of yourself.
Right. Right.
Somehow or the other, in a role like ours, and people say it's lonely, it's not just lonely. Somehow you become the manager and you become that,
Yeah.
person. And sometimes you get demonized because you make decisions, and everybody forgets that you're human, and that sometimes those decisions, as you say, whether it is necessary or mandatory, it is hard to deliver that. And you get to watch you look at yourself in the mirror every day and go, did I make that right decision? And
Right.
if and hindsight is 2020, if I were to do this now, would I have done it in the same way?
hmm
But in for me, again, lessons learned. Introspection is always good. And I do a lot of reflexivity. I journal a
Yeah.
lot. And that
Yeah.
allows
Good.
me to play it back. And not because I think it's a bad decision. It's just sometimes it happens again. You go, hang on, I've seen
Mm.
this before. I've
Yeah.
seen this and I know how to
Exactly.
react to it. But yeah, you do walk out of one situation and need to shake it off and walk
Yeah.
into the next within 2 minutes of each other and be able
Yeah.
to still operate, right? So,
Yeah. Absolutely. No, that's true. And just going back to the comment you made, it is a little bit lonely as a leader with that everyone's looking up to because you have to keep you have to keep it real, and you can't be a pretender, but at the same time, you have to have a projection of the office that's inspiring. One of the most difficult things to do is to be inspiring, and it really is built on being respected and being valued by your team. And a part of it is showing them that you truly care. A part of it is that you have a belief in what you're doing that's greater than their belief, that inspires them that you can do this. You have to look at difficult times. You got to be able to solve problems quickly to, instill confidence in them that you can do things that they know you'll be there. So it's almost like this hero persona that you have to hold. And to do that, for those of us who put our pants on the same way as everybody else, like all of us do, right? That's what my mama taught me. It's a challenge, and it has become kind of a lonely place, and that's why in my work I do a lot of business consulting, but I do a lot of coaching, and it's such a blessing to be able to walk alongside a CEO or a senior executive and kind of be that quiet partner with them and have a
right.
different set of experience, and I think. If you have a confidant or a coach or someone who you can share this with, maybe outside your company, it really is a huge asset. And it sounds like you're doing really great. I love the way you talk about these things, and I'm sure your team does love you and respect you, and that's why you're having so much success in your business. So, congrats on that. It's a great story. I like the strength of that you might have now next time if they try to cut too deeply. Just before we move on that, let's just say the same situation happened again, and you were in that same situation with the same players, but now you have the gravitas that you have because you're now a more seasoned executive than you were when that happened. You have a reputation and a status in the company that's a little bit different, and you have that experience And then you have the credibility that you gave good business metrics reasons for adding the people back, that some of these people remember, okay, well, she was right. Look, she's got the metrics now to show we didn't get that efficient. We didn't, we needed these people to continue to serve our customers or to grow or whatever the metrics were, right? How would you address it again? What kind of strength would you bring to that party if you had to go into that executive operating room and stand your ground?
What if I said that I've had that?
Been there, done that. Yeah.
Um, I think the difference is, and you pointed it out earlier, like women do have a different finding your voice and finding your
Mhm.
reason and
Yeah.
understanding how to do this without being categorized. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
um, I find that data helps. And
Yeah.
so it's less
Always.
of I think or I believe. It's
Mhm.
more of I've seen this before.
Yeah.
And this is I'm not, and I understand why we need to do X. Here
Mhm.
are the different ways we could achieve that without digging as deep. And so if you can answer one, two, three, four, five of the things, like the assumption that back office is going to work, for instance, which is normally what it is, right? There's a shared
Right.
service that's going to work brilliantly, except that
Right.
we don't have the staff to train them. So unless this happens, then
Yeah.
unless we can do those certain things, then maybe we should step back and consider that we do a phased approach to this. And I think that that has worked. Um, Walking in again, understanding that, somebody's spreadsheet, and my favorite thing is anything's possible on a spreadsheet, guys.
Yeah.
Let's start there. But in fact, have you considered all these nuances? And if you have, then walk me through your process because I'm not seeing it.
Mhm.
And that has
Good.
worked. Not that we haven't had to do changes in transformation, it's just taken a different form. And
Mhm.
it is
Yeah.
being able to, and I'm not going to say that every time that's going to work. Somebody's going to override you. But I think
Yeah.
my comfort remains that I've said and I've pointed it out.
Right.
And
Yeah, and
so,
it's good that you did. I mean, it's not a negative thing if you especially if you're using the information, the metrics to tell the story, and you pointed that out in a professional and respectful way. That's always honored in an organization. So I think that's really the right way to go about it. Good on you. And yeah, you'll win some, you'll lose some, but
exactly.
it's always best to bring the data. It is interesting. I just as a side note there, you said the person who controls the spreadsheet controls a lot. We used to say the person who controls the charts controls the company. So whoever was making the charts and putting their spin on things, would control decisions a lot. But I'm a big fan of data-driven decision making.
Yes,
Um, Not to have to get so much data that you paralyze yourself and you never make a decision. But and sometimes you don't have enough data, but getting things that are tangentially related and talking about how to put those together and bringing forward a logical argument for your position with whatever data information is available, turning that data into insights and then bringing those insights to the leadership in a way that makes sense is always a good approach. So, Siobhan, as we wrap up our discussion today, I always ask a couple of questions. I
right.
mentioned it to you in advance. So, you've already talked about your younger self a little bit, but if you did have to give a piece of advice to your younger self, like rewind 15, 20 years, think of a time when you could have used a piece of advice, and now knowing what you know, what advice would you give yourself?
I'm very much a mentor and a coach in myself in terms of just coaching staff. And I, of course, gravitate to young women. And that's just
Hmm.
because I don't think a lot of young women see themselves in the top executives
Yeah,
because there are
yeah,
so many barriers.
yeah.
If I had to talk to my younger self, it would be that everything doesn't have to be perfect for you to take the next leap of faith.
Hmm.
My colleagues probably had half the qualifications and they would say, yeah, I'm going to do it. And I'm thinking I need to do 10 more degrees to be able to, right? And
Yeah,
so
yeah,
my younger self, I would say, take the leap of faith faster and
yeah,
chart the course that way that it doesn't have to be a white picket fence at 30. There shouldn't be that, you have to be married, you must have kids, the
yeah,
pressures for a woman is a lot different, as you said earlier,
yeah,
to a
yeah.
man. And so my younger self, for a minute, tried to do what everybody, the status quo. And I
Yeah.
realized that that wasn't working. And so, if somebody had said to me that earlier, probably maybe nothing would have changed, but maybe life would have been different. So every time I speak to younger girls, younger women, first of all, do it, take it,
Yeah.
go for it. And
Mhm.
that failing it's okay, fail fast, recover, keep going
Yeah.
is
Exactly.
the idea.
I feel like what you just described is on the wall behind you. Mindset is everything. And so to have a more positive, believe in yourself mindset and not be not be basically hindered by the mindset that's kind of pushed upon you, what your role is or what it takes. I remember in my career, I went into one position and it was an older gentleman who I was working for, and I was all excited about taking the new job, but I was the youngest person who had ever been in that job. And
Right.
he didn't get to that level in that job until he was in his 40s and I was 29, right? So um, he told me right off the bat, he says, "Well, we both know you shouldn't be here, and I said, "Well, that's a great way to." I'm thinking to myself, "That's a great way to start a conversation, right?" And I proceeded to just be as positive as I could. Just listen, I believe I have every right to be here because I've earned it through this and this and this, and I intend to do a good job for you. And I did. And he turned around. But in that case, I had to turn my boss around because I had to have a stronger mindset. But it wasn't easy for me. It was hard to. I believed in myself, but boy, when your boss's boss doesn't believe in you, this
That's
guy was a
yeah.
really, I mean, that was a shock to a young guy that I had to just be a little bit more on my own from the beginning. But anyway, mindset is everything. I love that. All right.
Mindset is everything.
Yeah. Well, I align with that tremendously. Let's go in the other direction. So you and I are sitting somewhere in the beautiful St. Thomas area, and we're having a glass of wine, and we're talking about our careers and our lives. And what are you going to tell me you're most proud of 20 years from now, 30 years from now?
The next four CEOs, I had a hand in the development. I
Yeah.
think, and it's not, I know a lot of people talk about their teams and talk about my research was actually on team and how strong
Hmm.
and powerful that is and understanding how teams thrive and how people develop. And
Yeah.
people development, which was very different. Even my thesis examiners asked, how does an engineer come from that kind of technical black and white to being so people focused? And
Yeah.
so in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years time, having a good glass of wine, it would be that I've helped a few people, I've mentored
Mm.
a few people and they're thriving, not surviving, thriving in
Thriving.
whatever role that they've
Wow.
chosen, whatever path. And if it's a few women, then I've won.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, well, that's a beautiful thing. After going through a corporate career and now being in, running my own business and doing things and talking with people like yourself in these podcasts, it's pretty clear to all of us who've been around the block a few times, like you have, that it's great to, bring in the project. It's great to bring in the profitability for the company. It's great to have your own success and have, a great financial and lifestyle future for your family. But the thing that really matters are the people we touch along the way. And as you said, specifically, not only touch them in a positive way, but actually lead them to have a better opportunity to be great leaders themselves. And that is a tremendous, tremendous gift if you're able to do that. And I'm glad you realize that now because I'm sure you've already done it. You're still doing it, and you will continue to do it, and you'll be a positive influence in your company, in your community, and hopefully a few young men as well. I mean, let's not completely dismiss those young men.
On
I
a
just,
positive, I have a
yeah,
son, so of course I'm
okay,
taking
there you go. So that's your
can't
motivation.
leave the male behind, but I
Honestly, sometimes the young men need more help than the young women. I mean, frankly, and they're always less mature, for whatever age group they're at. That's my experience anyway.
so yeah, you're very right. And I say women because I know that but my son, when I look at my son and I look at how, nurtured and stuff, I'm always cognizant that if I had a girl, would I have done it that way? And
Yeah,
if not, then
yeah,
why is it different? So,
yeah. Why would it be different? Yeah,
why is it different? And so how he's being nurtured is definitely that kind of go for it, keep going. And young men, young women do need to, especially in a society where I think that I'm in technology and social media is given that kind of bandwidth that everything's perfect too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, everything's instant. And so we just need to be able to mentor and keep close to
Yeah.
them. So, yeah.
Well, he has a great example in you, and it's been absolutely fantastic having you on the program today. Thanks for being with us. If people wanted to get in touch with your company or with you, how would they do that?
LinkedIn is probably the best, and I do answer the DMs. So,
Good.
Siobhan James-Alexander. If you look for
Yeah.
me, then I will definitely be happy to connect and extend discussions, and hopefully can help somebody else, like somebody has
Yeah.
helped me.
Yeah, that's the right mindset. Thanks again. I certainly want to stay in touch, and maybe we'll have a follow-up to this conversation someday to see where things are moving with AI and telecommunications and technology advancements and how your business is thriving. So, all the best and God
Thank
bless.
you. Thank you very much for inviting me. Have a good day.
Well, that's it for Driven to Lead today. We really appreciate you being with us. Share this with a friend or a business colleague if you would. And if I could remind you again, please hit the like and subscribe buttons. We're very grateful for that. So until next time, always remember the high road leads to a better place.